Hello, 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 hello. Good afternoon to everybody, or good evening. On this Saturday afternoon, I'm sorry, this Saturday evening on September 16th of 2023. So today's subject is going to be about graffiti. So let's talk about graffiti. What is the history behind this unique artwork and where did it come from? All right. So I am one those people that I'm a fan of artwork. I like art. And for some reason, I have a weird fascination with seeing arts on the building, especially on abandoned buildings, um, in the inner city neighborhoods, and in downtown area. And I always wonder, well, where did graffiti come from, and how did it get up to this point? Who came up with the idea of putting art on public display, as far as like art on buildings and different different locations and whatnot? What made people decide to just draw images on in the public? So I said, well, let me just do the history, let me do the knowledge on this, let me look up some information and whatnot. So I decided to go ahead and gather some information up, and it's quite interesting. Now, what people don't know is that graffiti is one of the four element or five element of hip hop. So graffiti is one of the five element of hip hop music or the hip hop culture, and because all the element is consist of MCing, DJ, breakdancing, and knowledge. So graffiti is a part of those elements. And my whole goal is to try to present as much information as I possibly can, share as much information, hopefully that people will find this information valuable or whatnot. All right, so I want to just go ahead and show you a couple of artworks that I came across. All right, before I get started. All right, so look at this artwork right here. There's one graffiti. That's the second graffiti. And normally you'll see the graffitis on abandoned buildings or somewhere near the railroad tracks. Okay. Then here's another one. Yeah, that's another graffiti artwork. All right, I think I already showed this picture. But anyways, that those are what you call graffitis. Now, let's get into the history. All right? Let's get into the history. So right here, according to Wikipedia, if you go down to the introduction, graffiti or graffito, latter rarely used except in archaeology, is art that is written, painted, or drawn on a wall or other surface, usually without permission and within public view. Graffiti ranges from simple written words to elaborate wall paintings and has existed since ancient time, with example dating back to ancient Egypt, ancient Greece, and the Roman Empire. All right, so it speaks on how it's a controversial subject. In most countries, marking or painting property without permission is considered by property owners and civic authorities as defacement, and vandalism, which is a punishable crime, citing the use of graffiti by street gangs to mark territory or to serve as an indicator of gang related activities. Graffiti has become visualized as a growing urban problem for many cities in industrialized nation, spreading from New York City subway system and Philadelphia in the early 1970s to the rest of the United States and Europe and other world regions. So it go into the etymology. So graffiti, which comes from the word graffito, right, which means to scratch. The term graffiti is used in art history for works of art produced by scratching a design into a surface. A related term is graffito, which involves scratching through one layer of pigment to reveal another beneath it. This technique was primarily used by potters who would glaze their wares and then scratch a design into them. In ancient times, graffiti were carved on walls with a sharp objects. Sometimes chalk or coal were used. The word originates from Greek graphin, meaning to write. All right, so here's a picture right here. So this is a ancient graffiti in Egypt. Okay, so it says ancient graffito in Umbo Temple, Egypt. All right, and see here's another one, an abandoned roof felt factory with graffiti in Finland. Okay, and here's another ancient graffiti. All right, another one. And then this one, the graffiti from the Museum of Ancient Graffiti in France. All right. So just to show a few things for y'all. Oh, and here's one right here. This is interesting. Soldiers with Tropical Fantasy Graffiti from 1943 to 1944. So basically to show you that graffiti has been around for a long period of time. Okay. So it goes into the history. It says the term graffiti originally referred to the inscription, figure drawings, and such found on the walls of ancient, which well this word right here means tomb actually. So it was found on the walls of ancient or ruins, as in the catacombs of Rome or at the Pompeii. Historically, these writings were not considered vandalism, which today is considered part of the definition of graffiti. So the only known source of Sephardic language of an ancient form of Arabic is from graffiti, inscriptions scratched on the surface of rocks and boulders in the predominantly basalt desert of southern Syria, eastern Jordan, and northern Saudi Arabia. So Sephardic dates from the 1st century BC to the 4th century AD. All right. And so then it talks about the ancient graffiti. Some of the oldest carved paintings, some of the oldest cave paintings in the world are 40,000 years old, one found in Australia. The oldest written graffiti was found in ancient Rome around 2,500 years ago. Most graffiti from the time was boasted about sexual experiences. Graffiti in ancient Rome was a form of communication and was not considered vandalism, right? So it says ancient tourists visiting the 5th century Cadell at what's the name of this city? Sigiriya and Syriaca write their names in contemporary over commentary over the mirror wall, added up to 1,800 individual graffiti produced there between the 6th and 18th centuries. So most of the graffiti referred to the frescoes of semi-nude females found there. One reads, "Wet with cool dew dips, fragrant with perfume from the flowers, came the gentle breeze, jasmine and water lily, dance in the spring sunshine, sidelong glances of the golden hued ladies stab into my thoughts. Heaven itself cannot take my mind, as it has been captivated by one last among the 500 I have seen here." That's interesting. So basically, as you can see, the concept of what we call graffiti has its history and its origin back in ancient time period. So now let's go into the modern graffiti, right? So modern time, graffiti art has its origin with young people in the 1960s and 1970s in New York City. Tags were the first form of stylist contemporary graffiti, and visually throw ups and pieces involved with the desire to create larger art. Writers use spray paint and other kind of materials to leave tags or to create images on the sides subway trains, and eventually move into the city after the NYC Metro began to buy new trains and paint over graffiti. All right. And so it also goes on to say, while the art had many advocates and appreciators, including the cultural critic Norman Mailer, others, including New York City Mayor Ed Koch, considered it to be defacement of public property and saw it as a form of public blight. The taggers called what they did writing, though in an important 1974 essay by Mahler referred to it using the term graffiti. So contemporary graffiti style has been heavily influenced by hip hop culture, and the myriad international style derived from Philadelphia and New York City subway graffiti. However, there are many other traditions of noble graffiti in the 20th century. So graffiti have long appeared on building walls and latrines, railroad boxcars, subways, and bridges. An early graffiti outside of New York was the inscription in London reading "Clapton is God," in reference to the guitarist Eric Clapton. So, creating the cult of the guitar hero, the phrase was spray painted by an admirer on a wall in an Islington or Islington, North London in the autumn of 1967. The graffiti was captured in a photograph in which a dog is urinating on the wall. All right. All right, then. So, not to go any further into this, so graffiti has always been a cultural expression and it has been a way for people to showcase their talent, their artwork, their skills, and whatnot. So that's one of the reasons why graffiti is used. And also it was used as a way to mark a territory. So whatever the territory you come from, right? Whatever hood you repping or whatever set you claim, you're gonna mark it in the area. So your ops or people that visit the area know that this is the territory of such and such, and they will become aware of that. So, as it mentioned in the article, graffiti was used as a form of communication, and it's still used as a form of communication because when you look at gang rivalry, what do? They go to each other's territory and put graffiti as a way to let it be known that they was in that person's territory. So, let's see what else. Uh, so I want to show you guys this real fast. This here comes from an article, a website called csdt.org. Alrighty. So this article speaks on how graffiti is part of the elements of hip hop. So it says graffiti is considered one of the four elements of hip hop, along with MCing, rapping, DJing, b-boy, breakdancing. Graffiti, like the other three elements, is an art form and a mean of cultural expression. Like the other forms of hip hop, it also expresses resistance. Graffiti challenges, for example, mainstream notion of what counts as art, what count as public space, and what counts as property. Just as MC and DJ challenges what counts as music, and b-boy challenges what counts as dance. All right. So graffiti, unlike the other forms of hip hop, is more easily misunderstood because it is often done illegally and the artists are often secretive about their real identities. As such, it has not received the kind of positive mainstream recognition afforded to rappers, DJs, and dancers. Some professionals in the art world have embraced graffiti, but that doesn't mean that the public at large understands and appreciates what graffiti is all about. So say graffiti has a long and proud history. The subculture surrounding graffiti has existed for several decades and is still going strong. The graffiti artists or writers, as they prefer to call themselves, are passionate, skilled, community oriented, socially conscious in ways that profoundly contradicts the way they've been portrayed as common criminals and vandals. All right. So graffiti, if we define it as any type of writing on the wall, goes back to ancient Rome. And if drawn images count, then we could point to the first graph artist, right? It says, but the style of urban graffiti that most people have seen and know about, the kind that uses spray cans, came from New York City in the late 1960s and was born on the subway trains. Taki 183, who lived on 183rd Street in Washington Heights, worked as a messenger who traveled all throughout the city. While he did so, he would use a marker and write his name wherever he went, at subway station, and also the insides and outsides of subway cars. Eventually, he became known all throughout the city as this mysterious figure. So in 1971, he was interviewed for an article by the New York Times. Kids all over New York realized the fame and notoriety that could be gained from tagging their names on the subway cars. Began to emulate Tacky 183. The goal was to get up to have one's name in as many places as possible, and as kids compete against each other to get famous, the amount of graffiti on trains exploded. All right. So for example, Jean Basquiat, the famous artist, right? He had so many graffitis in the public display, right? And he would draw graffitis on the train station. He would draw graffitis on the wall everywhere. So Jean Basquiat was pretty well known for that. And there was another guy. Let me pull his name up for y'all. So this guy right here, he had put up a graffiti saying crack is whack. But this graffiti, well, this particular artist, he was known for his social activism and he was known to convey a message. So one of the message was crack is whack. Again, crack is whack. You heard it from Whitney Houston, right? When she did her interview with Diane Sawyer, I think that was her name, or even Barbara Walters, one of those two ladies she did an interview with. And they asked her, the question was asked to her, was she doing crack at that time? She said, I don't do crack. Crack is whack. So, and everybody might wonder, well, where did that saying come from? Crack is whack. So that concept comes from this individual here, and I'm about to pull it up for you on Wikipedia. All right. So this gentleman right here, his name was Keith Allen Herring. Keith Allen Herring was a graffiti artist. Okay. Let me post this picture up for y'all. Okay, so he was a graffiti artist during the 80s and 90s, and he was a social activist, and his whole purpose was to convey a message as far as like what his activism was all about. So during that time in the 80s, there was a lot of issue regarding to the AIDS crisis, the AIDS epidemic. So he was very active and very prominent in the social activism behind that. So he would use his graffiti artwork as a way to relay messages, important messages. All right. So anyways, let's go back to the whole concept about crack is whack. So why is crack is whack? So here it is. The reason why it's whack, because during the 80s, the crack cocaine era was at an all-time high. It was on the rise. Okay. And it was talked about so much in the news. So you will find clips from George Bush Sr. to what's that president's name? Ronald Reagan. So Ronald Reagan and George Bush Seniors, they spoke a lot about they spoke out against crack, supposedly. However, yeah, it was a serious epidemic. It was a serious crisis during that time. And then also Nancy Reagan, she did an ad speaking about crack. And then they had a host of celebrities doing commercial, basically saying kids stay away from drugs and why you shouldn't be doing drugs such as crack cocaine and how it's poisoning and deadly and whatnot. So one of the few people on there was Michael Jordan. They had him on there. But anyways, let's just get into this history. So the whole concept about crack is whack is a mural created in 1986 by an American artist and social activist, Keith Haring, located near the Harlem River Drive in East Harlem. The mural services as a warning against crack cocaine uses, which was rampant in major cities across the United States during the mid to the 1980s. As a symbol of anti-drug activism, Crack is Whack commemorates Herring's powerful social political presence as an artist and remains a part of New York City's repertoire of iconic public art. Okay. So this was the artwork right here. Okay. That was the artwork. And so it goes into historical context. So Herring's anti-crack mural emerged during a period of intense political tension in the United States due to widespread illegal drug use. So crack cocaine became popular in poor and working class neighborhoods in major U.S. cities like New York during the 1980s. So the number of regular crack users nationwide spiked from approximately 4.2 million to 5.8 million from 1985 to 1989. As public concern over this crack epidemic grew, President Ronald Reagan strengthened drug prohibition policy and the severity of their penalties in accordance with the government's so-called war on drugs. And they got this right in Wikipedia, the so-called war on drugs. But Crack is Whack does function as a public announcement to warn New Yorkers against the physiological and legal repercussions of crack cocaine. All right. Then the motivation behind it, in addition to its relevance on a national scale, Crack is Whack largely pertains to Herring's personal experiences, although he immediately took hallucinogens as a method of rebellion and valued their mind expanding power as inspiration for his art. Herring was highly opposed to crack cocaine. He considered a businessman's drug designed to profit the supplier and make the user aggressive, irrational, and grossly addicted. So during the height of the crack epidemic, Heron's studio assistant and friend by the name of Benny started to abuse the highly potent drug. After various failed attempts to help Benny overcome his addiction, in addition to his own rising frustration towards the government's apparent inability to curb the widespread epidemic, Heron decided to create the anti-drug mural in Benny's honor. All right. So it says, without having been commissioned or even given legal permission at all, Heron set out to create Cracker's Whack on the wall of an abandoned handball court in a park at 2nd Avenue and East 128th Street on June 27, 1986. Upon the completion of the mural, Heron was arrested by the New York City Police Department for vandalism of city property and faced potential jail time in addition to heavy fines. However, media sources like the Washington Post and the New York Post and even city locals themselves verbalized their support of Heron's mural in the wake of the crack epidemic. So Harwin plead guilty to a reduced charge of disorderly conduct and was ordered to pay $100 fine. Soon after, the mural was vandalized and transformed into a pro-crack mural that reads "Crack It Is." Therefore, it was painted over in gray by the New York City Department of Parks and Recreation. The Parks Department Commissioner Henry J. Stern invited Heron to paint a new mural, offering him 8 sites, the paint, and the use of a van. Heron decided to repaint the original site on October 3rd, 1986. The new version relays the same style and anti-drug message, but exhibit a new arrangement of different figures on both sides of the handball court. All right. So it goes in to talk about in a 2002 interview, Diane Sawyer, American singer Whitney Houston, recited the phrase when discussing her problems with addiction. She later died of of a cocaine overdose. Wow. Wow. But anyways, yeah, that's where the whole concept of the whole the whole saying comes from. So it came from this man, Keith Haring. And Keith Haring was trying to convey a point, basically saying don't do drugs. So instead of saying don't do drugs, he said crack is whack. And he was honoring a friend of his who happened to die from an overdose, and his name was Benny. So Benny had an overdose of drug usage, and that's what took his life. So in order to honor his friend, he basically put that sign up, put up the graffiti to let people know that it's not the way to go. So the point is basically to say this to say all that graffiti has been used for multiple things. It has been used as a form of art. It has been used as a way to mark territories. And it has been used as a way to convey messages, political messages at that. And as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I am a fan of graffiti. I like graffiti arts. I always happen to walk by and I see graffiti artwork. Like I admire it, you know. And then when I look at the railroad tracks, I see all the graffitis. I'm like, this is unique. This is very creative. That's a gift. So I understand that it's considered as vandalism because you're destroying city properties and whatnot, and you're on private property doing so. But at the same time, I don't believe that it's doing that much of a harm because people are showing their artwork. Now, I will say this. I was offended. I personally was offended by this. I'm about to show you guys in one moment. Just give me a minute. So I became very offended when I saw this. This right here is Morris Brown University Stadium. Now I thought it was very offensive because in a way our ancestors had put up with so much fight to try to keep this school going and try to preserve its history, and for somebody just to come along and just write graffiti all over the stadium as if it doesn't mean anything to me, I thought it was very offensive, and I didn't like it because when I first saw that, I was just looking like, what the hell? What's up with all this graffiti on it? I know that the area is abandoned, right? But at the same time, somebody could have just tried to protect that campus or their whole premises to keep people from going in and writing and vandalizing property or whatever the case may be. So I thought that it was very offensive to see all these writings on the wall and all these extra things going on. I didn't think that was right, but again, these are kids, so they're going to express themselves in the way that they want to. They're going to use their creativity. Yep, but that's the stadium. hmm That is the stadium. hmm So, anyways, that's all the information that I have for the evening. And I hope you guys have a good one. I hope you guys enjoy yourself. Please be safe. Until next time, peace and power elevation. This your girl Tiffany, and I'm logging off. Deuces. Thank you all for watching my channel. Thank you guys for subscribing to the channel. And next time, I will come up with more topics. All right. Peace.